I'm back. Now, thus became our wedding date of June 8th, 1953. It was a Monday. I did forget to mention, we had no money, and the only job between us was when I worked at the dress factory. So we had no money for rings or things like that. But we found a set of rings in Woolworth's 5 and 10 cent store for $2. So that's what we used to get married with. And eventually they did turn green. Ha ha. All was well. So we began our new lives. After a few months of staying with Moni and Pop-Up, we bought a one-room camper, little tiny thing, and put it in the backyard here. And that was mine and Owen's home. By now, I'm getting pregnant. Owen Jr. was born April 29th, 1954. In the meantime, every time we could find rent somewhere for $5 a month cheaper, we moved. We just moved and moved and moved. Eventually, we wound up living in my mother and dad's apartment. They rented 3 rooms of their house and shared a bath. So we rented that because Owen found some work at the Westmont Drive-In Theater in the concession stand. That's where Sister Margie also worked, so they could ride together. Thus, we ended up staying there quite a while. After Owie was born, Owen Jr., pregnant again. Kathy came along 19 months later. Hers was November 10th, 1955. We were still renting the apartment at Mom and Dad's. Okay, I don't want to miss too much and I'm trying to get ahead of myself. We were still living there, pregnant again. Robert came along November 23rd, 1956. So I wasn't able to work anymore. I did work till the day before Owen Jr. was born, and then went back to work at Clark's dairy store as a waitress and cook in Hornerstown. Had to walk to work, and from work to Southmont. Mom kept baby Owie. I was pregnant with Kathy. After I got that far along, then I had to quit. So no more work for me for a little while outside of the home. Let's see. After Robert was born, it was about 2.5 years before Clark was born. By this time, Pop-Up had given us a piece of ground off of the farm up on what's now Cathy Court, and we decided we were going to build a home. We didn't have a dime, but Owen was able to convince different businesses to let us have lumber and things like that until we got it under roof. Once we got it under roof, the bank would give us a loan to continue. Owen's brother Dooney was building homes at the time, and he had no work going on right then. He was living in Florida with his family. So he came up from Florida and started, and between he and Owen, they built our little house on Cathy Court. This was in 1957. We moved in there right after Clark was born. Oh, okay. Shortly after that, or no, right before that, Owen got hired at U.S. Steel for a while. But they laid off so often. Eventually, another baby comes along, Mitch. Mitch was born October 13th, Uh, 1961. There was no more work, unemployment ran out, and sub ran out. And it was that way in this town for just about everyone. No one had work. I worked delivering mail for a little while until it was time to get out of here. Alice Jean and her family lived in California, and she assured us that we could find work out there real quick. So we packed everything up. Mitch was only 5 weeks old and sold most everything except what we could get in an old Nash car that we had bought and 5 kids and moved to California. You should have seen that car. Oh my goodness. It was loaded down, and we put all our clothes and things like that on the inside and laid the kids on top of it and in the back window, and then put a cradle full of stuff on the roof, whatever we could do. When our minister, Clem Rosenberger, saw it, he says, "Oh my, I'll pray for you." So the prayers worked because we did get there. We lived in California. Within 24 hours, we had rented a little house, and Owen got a good job. So we lived in California about a year. The first couple months that we were there, Owen and Kathy were in school, and Robert had to wait. There was a waiting list for kids to go to kindergarten. So eventually he was accepted into kindergarten. The first day of school, I walked him around the corner to catch a bus and talked to the bus driver a little bit, and he happened to be formerly from Nanny Glow here around Johnstown. So when it would come time to pick up the kids, I went around the corner and got Owen and Kathy, but no Robert. Robert was very small for his age, and I couldn't see him on the bus. So, I didn't have a phone, I didn't have a car, nothing. So I walked back to our house, and I'm crying, and my neighbor lady, who had 7 kids, said, "Oh, we'll find him." I said, "I don't even know the name of the school they took him to." But eventually, that driver, realizing that he was a new kid, drove back around after he unloaded the rest of his kids and brought him back. He remembered where he got him. And there's a mother standing there crying with 2 more babies, and Robert gets off the bus. I said, "Why didn't you get off the bus?" He said he liked it. He liked having that ride, and he didn't know. And he was so little he couldn't see out the window to see that I was standing there. Well, that was our first experience. Then we went on and we're enjoying California, and one day we had all planned to go, I think it was Memorial Day, to the San Diego Zoo, which was a pretty good hour and a half or 2-hour drive. And Robert wasn't feeling well. He was only 4 or 5, I don't know. Anyway, we went and we took a stroller. We rented a stroller because he wasn't feeling well. Well, he got so sick, we just all packed up. Alice Jean's family was with us and came back home. This was a Sunday. He was so sick, we were able to get a hold of a doctor through someone Alice Jean knew, and he actually came out to the house. What happened was Robert was a nose picker, and he had picked his nose and had previously been vaccinated so that he could go to school. And when he did that, and he picked the vaccination apparently, and vaccinated himself up in his nose, he was violently ill. We were afraid we were going to lose him, but we didn't. We got him well. Anyway, within that year, my brother writes and tells us he's getting married. Would Owen stand for him? And we said, we couldn't guarantee that we could be there, so we turned it down. But we were so homesick. we got thinking about it, and we thought, well, we'll just surprise everybody, and we'll show up for the wedding. So we got all the kids and packed them up in this old car and came back for Rob and Kathy's wedding. What a surprise, everybody thought. Well, it was. While we were home for just a few days, Pop-Up decided he'd come back out with us because Alice Jean was coming home for a visit within a week or so, and he could help her drive. So that's what we did. We went back to California. Well, I think we only stopped 1 or 2 nights. We just kept driving and driving, and got there, and Pop came back home with Alice Jean. Right after that, my parents were in a car accident and injured very badly, and they called us and told us. They called on Alice Jean's phone. We didn't have a phone, and told us, and we decided we had to come home. So we packed up everything. Owen gave up his job. They begged him to come back because he was such a good worker. He was working, building a gold mining machine where they dumped refuse from digging the gold. There was microscopic gold, and this machine would pick that up. It's a kind of gold that dentists and jewelers use. So he had a very good job. We were proud of him. Anyway, when we came back home, we did not return. 4 times in 1 year making that trip with 5 children was about enough. Coming back home, we had packed the stuff, our belongings, in a trailer, a hand-built trailer, not a rental, and got rid of most everything except our clothes and a few things, toys and things like that the kids had. And we started back to Pennsylvania. Outside of Albuquerque on the desert, a wheel came off the trailer and went straight down the middle of the road past us while we're driving. As soon as we saw that and hit the brakes, of course, down we went. There was a state trooper riding along, and he just stood there and laughed and laughed. He couldn't believe it. Anyway, there we were in the middle of the desert, broke down. We also had Owen's nephew Tyke in the car, bringing him back. Well, the state trooper said, well, you can't leave your stuff here. You have to get rid of it. Well, how are we going to get rid of it? We have no way. Well, there's a gas station down the road. I'll bet they'll take it. And we said, no, we didn't want to do that. There was an Indian reservation nearby. So we unhooked the trailer, what was left of it, and drove up into the Indian reservation. Left the kids by the trailer with Tyke. Tyke was 14 or 15. And tried to make the people up there understand that we had all this stuff we wanted to give them. The postmistress on the reservation was an English woman, and so she was able to explain to the Indians. So an Indian buck and a squaw came down to our breakdown with a pickup truck. What fun. Owen had a bunch of girly books he was bringing back with him. So we had to get rid of everything. So that old buck, he saw those books, and he grabbed them and shoved them under his truck seat. Man, I'll bet you that squaw lived hard for a few nights. He took them. They took everything that we could. We kept as many clothes as we could, that's all. The children had some little toy cars and things, whatever they could put in their pocket, and that's all they got to take. So the Indians got all that stuff. And we laughed later because, for instance, I had a depression glass cookie jar. And I was always great for pranking people. And I had artificial poop and artificial vomit and all that kind of stuff that I played on people. Well, I had stuffed that in the cookie jar. And I'll bet when those Indians opened that cookie jar, took the lid off of that, they probably wondered, what in the hell kind of people are these anyway? And we had an electric French fryer. Well, they had no electricity at the Indian place, so but they got that, and a whole bunch of shortening and just things like that we just laughed and laughed about. Still laughing many years later. We went into Albuquerque and found a grocery store and some cardboard boxes and mailed what clothes we were able to keep back to Pennsylvania because we didn't have enough room in the car anymore to put the kids. So we sent the stuff back home. Coming home, we broke down. We thought we were broke down out in Iowa somewhere. And Owen said, well, we're on a hill. There's a cornfield down there. I'll just drift it down that way and catch it in gear. Well, the car never caught in gear. So there we were in the middle of the night, 5 kids, down in a cornfield where nobody could possibly see us in the car. So he crawls up onto the highway and started hitchhiking. By the way, he also had a 2 or 3 day beard by this time. And I thought, oh, Lord, no one's ever going to pick him up. But a young couple with 2 small children did stop and ask him what was wrong. He said, we're broke down. I need to find a gas station. They said, well, buddy, you just passed one. Well, we were so out of it that we didn't realize it. So they took him back to the gas station, and he got gas, and the gas station man brought him back to the car. That's what was wrong. The car was out of gas. So eventually we got started again. We arrived in Pennsylvania 2 days before Christmas with just what was on our back and a few clothes that were being mailed. Moni was so worried about it, she took the kids over to Westmont. There was a little store, and bought them each a pair of boots because it was snowing by this time. So that was their Christmas present, a new pair of boots. Okay, Owen's brother said, don't let them get away again. He said, send them down here and I'll find work for Owen. So within 2 weeks, we moved on to North Carolina and moved in all, let's see, 7 of us, in with Iris and Dooney and their 4 kids in their house. Bless their heart, they took us in, and there we stayed for 9 weeks. I'll have to stop a little bit and I'll fill you in on those times that we were in there.